We all know that real estate has created more millionaires than any other industry on the planet. We also know that it has created a lot of heartache due to mismanagement, overborrowing, and just simple life events that happen to all of us. Welcome to the Cash Flow Pro podcast. My name is Casey Brown, and I am your fearless leader. And although we might be bourbon sipping and at times foul-mouthed Southerners, we will always do our best to be honest, straightforward, and due diligent with all of the information we pass along to you. Welcome to the show. Hey there, and welcome to today's episode of Cash Flow Pro, your daily real estate investing podcast and YouTube channel. I am here today with Corey Geary of New Age Wholesaling and Novation Nation. Now, Novation is actually a thing. It is something that people do in regards to buying real estate, and just wanted to say that to capture your attention in the very beginning, because you are going to want to hear more about Novation and the strategies that are involved, the legalities that are involved, and I am going to do the best job that I know possible to ask questions, as many questions as possible, of Corey here to answer and tell us and lead us down the path of what this is, and hopefully somebody that will perk their ears up and say, hey, Corey, I want to come join forces with you. I want to join your mastermind. I want to do something towards the end. So I guarantee you're going to want to listen. So Corey, how are you doing today, sir?
I am doing wonderful, Casey. Thank you for having me on, man. It's true pleasure and honor.
Absolutely. We're glad you're here. And we're again, we were talking pre-show, which, as my listeners are well aware, we do a lot of. I want to kind of start here a little bit with yourself. Tell us a little bit about you, where you come from, how you got started in real estate in general. And then I would like to kind of reserve the Novation discussion for kind of the guts of this whole thing. But tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah. Well, name's Corey Geary. I live here in Phoenix, Arizona, kind of the guru capital of the world as far as real estate's concerned. You got
Seems
Sean
that way.
Terry. Yeah, the all-in guys. I mean, it's just crazy who we got playing here. And I got into real estate at the end of 2016. I was a blackjack dealer in a casino for, what was that, 16 years? And it was a good job, saved up some money, because you make a lot of tips. And I was literally watching that show one night, Flip or Flop. I'm sure most of your viewers know the show with Tarek Al-Moose. Yeah, Tarek Al-Moose. I feel like they kind of like revolutionized, got everyone to want to be a fix and flipper in the real estate space. But I'm watching that show. I have some money saved up from my night casino job, and I'm there with my girlfriend at the time. My girlfriend at the time was a part-time realtor. And we're watching the show, and she goes, "Why don't you flip a house so I can list it?" And I was like, "I don't know. It seems easy enough. Take 30 minutes, make $80,000." And because they glorify it, right?
Right.
They totally glorify it. I'm literally on my because I run. I'm an avid runner, and I'm running around the neighborhood the next morning. And I saw one of those bandit signs, fix and flip, buy price 250, ARV 350. I stop on my morning run. I call that number. I bought that house. It took me 6 months to flip it, and I made $8,000. That was, yeah.
Oof.
So first deal I ever did. I actually made money on it, which is cool. That was my first, kind of taste of real estate. Fast forward a little bit. I bought a second deal from a wholesaler. I was going to local RIAs, starting to network with people. I made $20,000 on my second deal. On my third deal, though, I bought 4 houses all at once. I got a new contractor in place because the other one, me and him didn't see eye to eye on stuff. Well, that new contractor took us to the cleaners. On those 4 houses, I lost $250,000. I lost all my 401k money from the casino. I lost my life savings. I lost my previous flip money, and it set me back to zero. All I had was my night job.
Didn't set you back to zero, set you back to less than zero.
Oh my God. It was very, very painful experience because it was the beginning of my journey. That contractor just, he saw a mark on my head, and he took me to the cleaners, and I didn't want to give up real estate. And I knew
real quick, dig into that just a hair. How, and what happened?
So, I'm working my night job and he was just sending, I was sending him checks every single week and he would send me pictures of the properties. I wasn't doing any follow up with his work. I wasn't going to the properties like I should have been. I didn't do my due diligence on him as a contractor. I didn't check the ROC. I didn't talk to any previous clients. And he was sending us pictures of remodel properties and it was not even our properties. And it was a complete idiotic mistake of mine to not like follow up with him and make sure he's doing something with my money. And I mean, I didn't lose a quarter million from him, but it was, from all the money I gave him and then he didn't do any of the work. I had to re-wholesale the properties back to the wholesaler at a loss because I had to put money down on those properties. I had all the holding costs. And
Sure.
so at the end of the day, it was somewhere around 240 and some change is what I lost through the whole deal. So it was a very painful experience, and it was just I was naive and thinking that this was easy.
Yeah.
I didn't have a
Well,
mentor.
and I'll tell you, as a real in the real estate sales side of things, so many times it's almost like Home and Garden, or whatever the channel's called, Fix and Flip, the shows, and all of them from Bob Vila on. I mean, I'm not bad mouthing Bob by any stretch, because he has taught a lot of people a lot of things, but it's glorified it, and it's not so much that it's glorified it, because it is fun. It's a good job. It's enjoyable. You meet a lot of people. You see a lot of things.
Mhm.
You get to see a creation actually come to life when you envision replacing showers and kitchens
Yep,
and all that stuff. But the problem, this is the main problem that I always ran into in the sales world, is what you hit on. It happens in 30 minutes. And where you and I both know that you get this vision, well, they're out of that color of tile until 3 weeks from now. Well, then you have to delay that guy. Then your plumber doesn't show up, or then your electrician doesn't show up, or there's so many different things, and it's virtually impossible to even remotely. So the time constraint of the show, I felt like, really gave that's where the falsehood lied, in my opinion.
correct. Yeah, they sell the dream without all the headache that goes along with it. And there is a lot of stuff that goes along with it. And then, we've overcome it a lot, and we still fix and flip even. And we've make great money on fixing and flipping. It's just it really changed my perspective. Like I wanted to be that guy on TV, right? I wanted to be this fix and flipper who was making 80 grand per deal, doing these, 3 deals a month kind of thing. And it really set me back, and I didn't want to give up,
And
and I had no
the other
money.
part of that show doesn't show the drama of them going through what you went through, because
Exactly.
at some point that had, maybe not to the tune of 250 grand, but that had to have happened at some point where they had a deal that went
And
awry.
it could have been happened before they even, created the TV show.
And
They
it could
definitely got
happen
some
between
lumps.
last episode and next episode, and they
Right.
just don't talk about it.
Yeah, they definitely
So,
take some lumps, and they don't glorify that part.
that's right, man. It's like anything else, and it's a job, and but anyway, uh, so you said you're still doing some fix and flips.
We still do them. I'm slowing down right now just because of the market uncertainty. But we still do them. We're very good at them now. But that's not the bulk of my business. And how I kind of got in the bulk of my business is that when that happened to me, I didn't want to give up real estate. I was out of money, but I knew there was these wholesalers getting deals, and they would talk about, oh, you can wholesale with no money, da da da. And so like, I literally went on Google and I typed in how do wholesalers get deals, and Mr. Sean Terry popped up, and so I went down the Sean Terry rabbit hole. I bought his course, I joined his mastermind, and I started wholesaling. And we started making a little bit. I started making a little bit of money from doing some wholesaling, and here on the local model, and actually built up, a small little company. I put a bunch of cubicles in my house, and I hired college kids to come over and cold call for me, so I can go out and lock up deals.
Yeah,
And this is yeah, it's what I did for a good, year and a half or so. Eventually got into an office, and we scaled up to, in the local model, probably about 10 deals a month. We were doing okay. I quit the casino back in 2018. So I ended up quitting the casino, going full time real estate. And then I finally decided, what I want to do is take this and go nationwide with it. And so early 2000 or end of 2019 or early 2020, I went nationwide with the wholesaling efforts, and that's kind of how we transitioned from local to nationwide. So
Gotcha. Now, one thing, obviously, you have to rely on there's a certain bit of computer algorithms I'm sure you have to rely on when wholesaling in markets that maybe you may or may not be ultra familiar with. Like, for instance, if you said you're in Phoenix and if you're wholesaling a property in Chattanooga, Tennessee, or looking to buy a property at a wholesale price in Chattanooga, Tennessee, Chattanooga's a beautiful place, but it almost to me seems like that thing to offset your risk, you really have to buy something like that cheap. I mean, and I don't even cheap is relative, but I mean, how do you? So before we get into the novation part of this, how do you justify that risk, or what do you use to give you what you need to know?
it's a good question because in the beginning when we went nationwide, we were horrible. Like, I mean, we out of every 5 contracts we'd get, one would close, and that's because we didn't know the markets and we were comping them wrong. We knew how to comp in Phoenix, right? But that's different than what, like you said, Chattanooga, Tennessee, or say, for example, Ohio. And so, like, we were horrible at not only comping, and we were also horrible at finding buyers, and it was just it was very painful in the beginning. And in fact, in the first 3 months when I went nationwide, we lost a lot of money. Like the first, because I had a team now and I had all this overhead. I had my office. We were spending money on marketing. We had just turned PPC on, and so like I'm spending all this money. In the first month we lost like $70,000. The second month was 50,000. Third month was 30,000. I was really thinking, oh my god, if I don't really get this under control, I'm gonna have to close the doors. And through trial and error, man, is how we really learned how to comp deals nationwide, talking to local realtors, talking to local investors, figuring out where the sweet spots are, where the places to play are at. And just through trial and error is how we learned how to comp. And then on the buyer side of things, we learn techniques and how to get these buyers. So we use comping tools like PropStream. There's also right in our CRM and Freedom Soft, there's a comping tool in there that you can do nationwide. And then we use now we rely a lot upon local realtors to do CMAs for us on the Novation side of things, what we'll kind of get to here in a minute. And so buyers was still problematic. And so we ended up getting onboarded with this company called Investor Lift. They're very good at finding buyers. They have a platform with all the buyers uploaded into one platform. And we learned how to utilize our realtors relationships that we just go into realtor.com, find all the top performing realtors and cold call them and ask them if they have any off market buyers. And so we just developed different strategies on how to exit these deals. Now, that does take me to my next point. I was in a mastermind one time, and this was like back in 2019-20, and there was a guy in the mastermind, and he made $2.2 million a year before. And he was like, half of the money he made was from novations. And I'm like, what the heck is that? And then he talks about how he lists these deals on the MLS. And I'm like, this could be a solution to one of my problems because we're having problems finding buyers. We're getting a lot of properties under contract, and a lot of these properties are in decent shape with PPC. You don't target distress, so you have a lot of livable properties. And these are more rural markets around across the United States. I'm like, man, if I could list these properties in MLS to retail buyers, I can, move these deals. And so that's why I really dove in down the Novation path because it fixed a big problem in our business.
All right.
That
Let's
was a lot, I
let,
know.
let's start here. Um, First of all, just because if there is listeners out there who aren't aware, PPC is pay per click, which is basically, it's basically intent marketing. It's somebody that has an intent to say, you go to Google and you type in, sell my house. Okay.
Correct.
Obviously you've got people there that that person is interested. So their intent is to sell their house, right? So intent marketing is PPC. Now let's move into novation and go ahead, Corey, and define novation just as you did with me, and then let's stop right after that, and then we'll have a small discussion.
Okay. Great question. So the term novation, the legal terminology, it means replacement of agreements, replacement of contracts. And so it's widely used in the landlord space. People novate leases, it's used in commercial, but it's not widely practiced in the single family space. And so it means that you're getting an AB contract with the seller, the initial agreement signed, and then you're replacing that agreement with the new buyer's BC contract. It trumps it. Where in wholesaling, you're staying in the middle via an assignment. So you're signing the rights over to the first contract to the new investor buyer. With novations, you're not staying in the middle. It trumps the AB contract, and now you've got the new buyer in place. And this is how we're able to sell these on the MLS with conventional FHA and VA financing, because conventional financing would not approve an assignment fee, where on novations, being that we remove ourselves from the deal, that now they approve the loan. And how we get paid is we put a lien on the property, and that lien gets paid off through escrow, and that's how we make our money. So it's just a lien payoff, like any mechanics lien. A mortgage is a lien. Any tax liens, anything like that. Financing will always approve line items that are a lien. And so that's how we keep ourselves in the deal. So it's just been great, because we can sell these properties now on the MLS to traditional retail buyers who have a conventional loan in place. And so not only are we able to sell these properties for more than we would wholesale, but then we got a big buyer pool, because obviously the biggest buyer pool in the world is the MLS. And then we're also able to lock up deals if we need to, higher cents on the dollar. Say their mortgage is 170, but your cash offer was 140. Well, we might be able to still go in there and novate that deal and still make money. So you're able to monetize more leads. You're paying for that lead anyways. Why not monetize it in a different way? If instead of wholesaling. And so that's kind of a 30,000 foot overview. I'll kind of stop there. It's a lot.
Yeah. So what's the specific lien called? What is the lien called that you put on?
So it's called a notice. We put a notice of interest on the property, and then when
Notice
we
of
go to close, we do a release of interest on the property. And the release, like the title companies would call you and say, "Hey, how much is it going to cost you to release your notice?" And then you're going to say, "Okay, you're going to take the AB contract, the BC contract, minus what the difference is, and minus any realtor fees and title fees come out of your spread, because your negotiation with the seller was a net number to them." So it's just a notice of interest, and you release it with a release of interest.
So, all right. Of course, the legalities, I guess, are initially the first question that I've got, and with that is going to come the legalities of, like, on a per state basis. It seems
Correct.
to me like while the process sounds is right. I mean, process wise, I have it all in my head. You have you have AB contract where you're B, seller is A. Then you have BC contract. You are still B. C is the retail buyer,
Hmm.
and due to like anti-flipping clauses and stuff like that for FHA loans and so on, you simply just put a lien on the property for the difference. The seller retains the title. The initial seller retains the title. Then you become a line item expense in the difference in the sale price and the agreed set purchase price between the buyer. And then you become a line item expense out of there. Now, the
Correct.
only, the main, one of the first issues, now you're not a licensed agent in any state, correct?
I am in Arizona, but I would not list my own novations because it's conflict of interest, and my attorneys have advised not to do it. So you
Well,
always want to get a licensed agent to represent you as the seller, because you're acting as seller now, because you have what's called an attorney in fact signed, and then you want to have a licensed agent represent you. And that's how we get away with a lot of the legality issues, is that we're not going to list our own deals.
Now, I personally don't necessarily see. I see a bigger issue than that. That I'm sure you have an answer for. I don't mean to act like I'm an attorney or anything like that, but I've sold real estate for quite a while, and the bigger issue at hand is I've seen several lawsuits, especially since the market has rose as quick as it has. A matter of fact, I have a good friend of mine that's in one of these lawsuits where he was a licensed agent, went in, bought a piece of property. He had knowledge of a situation that the seller didn't know, right? And bought a property for about a third of what it was worth, and turned around and did exactly what you're talking about. And seller and anyway, he's in a lawsuit over it. I mean, it
Hmm.
was like $700,000 or $800,000 is what's at question there. Now, so the fact that you're a licensed agent, does that not put you in a fiduciary position automatically when whether you approach me, whether you approach somebody else, whether you approach anybody, does that not put you in a type of fiduciary position to say, hey, I know this house is worth, and I know you talked about disclose, 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 disclose,
Yep.
then disclose more. Um, and I'm assuming that the disclosure takes care of all of that. But that's my question. It seems like as a license, when a license status comes into play, it just to me seems like it's an open door.
It absolutely 100% is. And the fiduciary duties, so I'm licensed in Arizona, so I don't have fiduciary duties in Washington and California. I'm not licensed in any other state, and that's where the majority of our novation deals are done at. Now, that being said, I have gotten in a little bit of trouble in Illinois, and I'll tell you a little story. In Illinois, they're cracking down on wholesaling. There's a lot of regulations going on there. We had closed the property, and we made $42,000 on it. 2 months after the close, the Department of Real Estate calls me from Illinois and says, "Hey, are you Corey Geary?" Yeah, I'm Corey Geary. And then they said, "Hey, it's Department of Real Estate of Illinois. You're under investigation for real estate fraud." I'm like, "Real estate fraud? Why? Why?" Well, did you list a property with a company called List of Freedom? And we used to use flat fee listing companies before we started using local realtors. And I was like, "Yeah." And he was, "Well, List of Freedom is under investigation for fraud." And being that they're under investigation for fraud, we saw your file, started investigating it, and we saw you made $42,000 in this property. How can you justify the $42,000? Did you wholesale this property? I said, "No, I didn't wholesale this property. It was a novation." And they're like, "Well, that sounds like a wholesale to us. Did you take chain on title?" I was like, "No, I didn't take chain on title." Listen, that sounds like wholesale to us. "Mr. Gary, you're under investigation for fraud. This is going to be elevated to the federal government or whatever it was. It's going to be up. The investigation was going to be pushed up. When we see your license in the state of Arizona, we'll be notifying Department of Real Estate of Arizona." And I said, "Okay, hold on." I said, "You're going to need to talk to my attorney." And I got my attorney involved. It cost me $7,000. My attorney, he squashed it. He completely squashed it. It didn't get elevated to the Department of Real Estate here in Arizona. It didn't go to any kind of federal case. He squashed it, and they're gone. But that did lead me to the decision of this year. I'm letting my license go because you are held to a higher standard when you're licensed, and you, even though I'm not licensed in Illinois, that could have came back and had some harsh repercussions here in Arizona for me. So it did put a little scare into me. So I now know I'm not going to be licensed no more practicing these novation deals all across the United States. So I've had a great. It was great. It was really beneficial for me to be licensed for the beginning of my journey. I learned a lot about contract law, how to walk and talk like a realtor. I got licensed because I wanted to list my own fix and flips. But at this point in my journey, all it does is add more liability. I never use my license anymore. I don't even know why really I've had it this long, but at this point, it's just a liability. So you do touch on something good there. And I'm going to be letting it go because of that reason. If another issue comes up, I don't want it to come back to me here in Arizona.
Sure, sure. Hi, this is Casey Brown, host of the Cash Flow Pro podcast and YouTube channel. Have you been thinking about investing in real estate but just don't know where to begin? I'd like to help by inviting you to check out our website at www.3000capital.com. There you will find an array of material that will help you learn all about real estate syndication. And while you're there, be sure to check out our free video series download titled 5 Must-Know Keys to Success in Passive Real Estate Investing. I'd also like to personally thank you for making Cash Flow Pro part of your day. Now, back to the show. Now, is there any, I guess initially, I'm into scalable business models. That's what I practice. That's what I teach, preach, whatever you want to say. And to me, it just seems like there's your one law being just like that in Illinois. Um, it's like they were like, okay, it sounds like wholesaling, it sounds like wholesaling, it sounds like wholesaling, but
Hmm.
and it took you $7,000 and an attorney to say no, it's not. But it seems like just for like in the state of Illinois, all they have to do is add, we're outlawing the practice of wholesaling and novation, and then that's
That's
it.
correct.
That gets done.
Absolutely.
Um,
I will touch on that for a minute. It's one reason why I'm reluctant about teaching the model, because the reason why wholesaling is getting regulated is because there's a lot of bad actors. There's
that's
a lot of
right.
bad actors who string homeowners along. They cancel them in the 11th hour. They're locking the property up too high, and that's why they can't get a buyer or whatever it may be. And it's happening all over the United States. And so you have all these states cracking down. Now, as novations gets more and more taught and it becomes more mainstream, the same thing will probably happen because you'll have a lot of bad actors doing this novation model the wrong way, not using the correct paperwork, maybe taking, for example, like there's one influencer who teaches that you take the proceeds from at the close and you take possession of the proceeds of the seller's proceeds and then give it to the seller. I never want to be in a court of law one day saying, "Oh yeah, I collected the seller's proceeds and gave it to the seller." And so we don't do that. We change that model with our novation strategy, but that's the way one influencer teaches it, and he does it with a power of attorney. We don't do a power of attorney; it has too much liability behind it. So we do things to reduce our liability. But obviously, if there's a lot of bad actors doing what some of these people are teaching and doing the wrong thing by the seller, there could be a time and day it could get regulated, just how wholesaling is. It happens with anything that's where it just becomes so mainstream and you have so many bad actors doing it. It's hard to mitigate that in the future.
Yeah, and there's a certain degree, and I've heard this many times in my real estate career, and the real estate wholesaling is to a certain degree, I think, held by the public as a way of almost defrauding somebody. It seemed, I think that's the way the public holds that position, in that,
Equity fees.
yeah, that there's not really and then people justify from the wholesaler side, that the wholesaler justifies by saying, well, I took the risk. Well, what risk did you really take by buying a house for 75% of whatever, the value? You didn't really take a risk. You bought it for either what it was worth, which if you find out later it wasn't, but then you back out, and what risk have you really taken? And that's I think the way the public kind of holds the idea. I think that Congress and especially state senates and so on and so forth, their time would be far better spent regulating and putting regulations on social media platforms, far greater than it would be trying to
That's right.
regulate home
Or
wholesalers.
e-commerce fraud or crypto
But
fraud, or like there's so many different
correct.
things out there that
But
they could focus
and
on.
I get that profit is how we all feed our kids. Don't get me wrong, and it's just, at what point does it rings, or speaks of years ago, especially in the state of Kentucky. If I have $200,000, and this may be a federal law, if I have $200,000 in equity in my house, I call the bank and say, hey, I'd like to do a HELOC. I'd like to take a home equity line of credit. All right. Well, you sign all the documents, and then I think it's federal. It is federal. Uh, you have 3 days to rescind, call the bank and say, hey, I decided not to do it, shred the documents, no harm, no foul, everything's done. Right. On the third day, that loan funds. And that was put into place because of people going out and convincing elderly or somebody that's not mentally capable of making a decision on mortgage on taking a an equity line of credit on their house. So I guess what I'm getting at is it seems like this is something that could eventually have some very strict regulations behind it, not the government saying, "Hey, you can't do this. This is not a valid
Correct.
anything." But it seems to me like it has the tendency to me to ring that way and say, "Hey, it's headed down the path of being regulated, and they're going to stop some of these guys
Correct.
from this." Now,
You just gotta read into the law. For example, in Illinois, we still do deals there. Now, my attorney was just like, "Hey, when you do a deal here, just double close." So I got a relationship with a nationwide transactional funding guy who will double close any of my deals nationwide for 1 point. So, like, I'm taking possession of the property for an hour with his money and then reselling it to the buyer on the back end, just how any traditional real estate is bought and sold. And so we do that in Illinois. Now, as time comes on and we see more and more regulations in each state, I know Oklahoma's another one, then we'll start doing that model a little bit more. So there's ways to act in ethics and according to law and still do the deals.
well,
You
that's
just
and that's I guess my question and you and I both know, and I've been involved. I've got a client on the real estate sales side who everything that's ever been done, every deal I've probably done 100 with them, and every deal is cash deal closed whenever they want. Cash deal closed whenever
Mhm.
they want, and that's how he gets things bought. And that's how, because it doesn't give the buyer a chance to really ever say no, I'm not interested. I decided, I've changed my mind, whatever, whatever, whatever. It basically says, hey, here's a contract. We'll close it in 3 days, cash money, no appraisals, no banks, no nothing. I'll write you a check. You'll have your money in a week, or you'll have your money in 4 days, whatever it is. And that just to me seems like a far almost a cleaner way to do it, but you cut all your FHA buyers out when you do that. Um, if especially if you're doing a flip, you automatically
Correct.
cut basically a third to half of your potential buyers out due to the anti. Now you cut them out for 6 months. So you buy the property, hold it for 6 months. You might still make a world of money. I'm just saying that it's the anti-flipping clause. It really restricts that potential of doing that. So, all right,
Right.
Corey, we are running out of time here, and with that, very interesting topic. And I know that there's going to be some folks that want to reach out to you and learn some more about this. So, when we get to that point, please think about how you want these folks, listeners, to potentially contact you to learn more, talk to you about it, see where they might be able to fit this in with what they're doing, whether they be a real estate agent, whether they be whatever the case is. So, but with that, these are a couple of questions that we ask every guest that comes on the show, and
Uh-huh.
there's no right or wrong answer. But what is the best book that you have recently read or are currently reading?
I'll tell you the best book I've ever read, because I've read it like 5 times, is Outwitting the Devil by Napoleon Hill. One of the most
Napoleon Hill is
spectacular
one of the.
books. Yeah, Napoleon Hill wrote Think and Grow Rich, which is
Yep.
it's a great book as far as mindset and getting your plate in the right space. But Outwitting the Devil is more of a modern term of Think and Grow Rich, and it wasn't released to the public to 2011. His family, Napoleon Hill's family, had it and locked away in a safe, the transcripts. And but that book is just phenomenal, and I've read it like 5 times. Every time I read it, I listen to the Audible while I'm reading it, because the devil has his own voice, so it's
Yep.
almost like a movie. It's so good.
That's
So that's
awesome.
all time favorite book.
Man, one more time on the title.
Outwitting the Devil by Napoleon Hill.
Outwitting the Devil. Yep, Napoleon Hill
Mhm.
was a great author, and
He was.
it's just amazing to me how long some of that stuff he talks about has lasted, and especially in Think and Grow Rich. So, all right, what is a dream vacation you have taken or hope to take?
Uh, well, dream vacation. Next one coming up would be going to China for a month. My wife is Chinese, so we'd like to go out there to Shanghai, spend time with her family, her immediate family. We just got married a year ago, and kind of relive the wedding out there with her family. And so that would be kind
Awesome.
of a dream vacation that's in the near future. Prior, I did a nice vacation down to Tulum, Mexico, like 6 or 8 months ago. Tulum was a beautiful spot. I was out there for a good 10 days, and so it was just we did a lot of scuba diving, a lot of hiking. It was beautiful.
Awesome. Awesome. Good deal. All right. Well, Corey, tell the listeners how they can reach out and get in touch with you, especially if they want to learn something about Novation. Obviously, we have
Absolutely.
a website, novationnation.com. But how can they reach out and get directly in touch with you if they have some
Best
questions?
place to talk to me directly, and I don't have VAs on there, at least not yet, is my social media. And Facebook, it's Corey Geary. And then on Instagram, it's the Corey Geary. And you could DM me on either one of those platforms, and I'm the one who responds. And so that would be the great place to talk about if you want to learn more about Novations, more about PPC. Obviously, we have a course, we got a mastermind. And yeah, I'm on the social media platforms all the time.
Awesome, man. Well, listen, listeners, please, if you don't mind, leave us a 5-star review, and also hit the subscribe button. And Corey, we really appreciate you being on here today, and at least leading us down a path of something we hadn't really learned about. So, thank you so much.
Absolutely. Truly honor and blessed to be here, my friend. Thank you.
Yes, sir. All right, everybody, have a wonderful rest of the day.
Cashflow Pro is hosted by Casey Brown, founder and CEO of 3000 Capital, a commercial real estate investment firm committed to providing its investors with ongoing cash flow and helping them build long-term wealth. If you enjoyed today's podcast, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you'll be notified about all our future episodes. You can find more information about us and our investment philosophy by clicking the link in the show notes below. Thanks for listening.